Water. The molecule made of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom is something all known life needs to survive and to thrive. However, not all humans are given equal access and opportunity to water. First Nations tribes and reserves all across Canada and the United States have been placed under water consumption advisories, ranging from the self-explanatory boil advisory to the harsh-sounding do not use advisory. Today, I'm going to talk about different kinds of water advisories, their effects, and what you can do about them. Then we'll get into different communities and how they've been affected. Welcome to episode 5. So let's talk about the different types of water advisory. When you turn on your tap, chances are that the water that comes out is safe and is healthy for consumption. But that isn't always the case. There are 3 main types of advisory: boil, do not consume, and do not use. Like I said before, the boil warning is fairly straightforward. The water is contaminated, but if you bring it to a boil for about a minute, it becomes safe to consume. When water reaches its boiling point at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit, most harmful bacteria are killed off. A boil warning is called into effect when the water is contaminated by diseases and other bacteria that are harmful to humans. Under this advisory, it is still safe to wash your hands with it and even to use it for bathing, as long as you have a strong immune system. Then we have the do not consume warning. What this means is that the water in question is contaminated by metals like lead or copper, and that the water shouldn't be consumed for any reason. In this state, you're also not supposed to use the water for other tasks like cleaning, although it can be used for hygienics amongst the more immune members of society like older teens and adults. The worst level of warning is the do not use advisory. If this advisory is ever issued, it's because the water poses a serious health risk that can't be boiled off. This can be due to a chemical spill or a situation like that, and if that's the type of water coming out of your taps, you cannot be using it for any reason. Major causes of water issues all boil down, pun intended, to either chemicals or ignorance of the environment when using chemicals, like pesticides. Landfills and roads are big sources of contamination because one leaks chemicals and the other lets chemical runoff into our water systems. As well, industries that deal with chemicals and metals have big effects because one leak or one spill could endanger an entire community. Residential items like pesticides, fertilizer, and other chemicals, cleaning products, can also affect water systems and quality. So what's the big deal about water advisories? Well, the big deal is that it often affects marginalized communities. In today's podcast, I'm going to be specifically talking about some First Nations tribes that have been affected. Way back in the 1960s and 70s, a community named Grassy Narrows fell ill to mercury poisoning. Mercury poisoning is both fascinating and terrifying. Its victims tend to experience a broad range of severe neurological effects, including but not limited to numbness in limbs and cognitive delay. Although we no longer live in the 60s or 70s, the children of Grassy Narrows are still experiencing the effects of mercury poisoning, which has been passed down through the generations. While it is a terrible, terrible occurrence, it is also a shining example of why access to clean, safe water is important. And if you thought that this problem ended with the 20th century, I'm going to ask you to try again. The Ucluelet First Nations tribe, who live on Vancouver Island in Canada, are under a do not consume water advisory, which was issued on May 19, 2014. According to a page on the Government of Canada's website, the tribe was assured $3.7 million by the Harper government. More specifically, the article mentions that they were to receive improvements such as a new reservoir, new pumps, and a plant for chlorination. All of these things would greatly help the community, but it's been more than 2,700 days without help, going by the dates of my research. The status is listed as under construction on the water advisory map, but the government page itself has been archived and hasn't been updated in about 7 years. It took a lot of digging, but I finally found a series of old PDF newsletters that appear to have been published monthly since 2011. In the news from June 2014, the major headline reads, "Government investigates allegations of burning toxic material at Lost Shoe Creek site." Aha! I read through all the sections related to the water advisory, and it turns out that the Waya Construction and Development Limited Partnership Company had caused a fire at one of the First Nations' main sources of water, which is Lost Shoe Creek. There are a lot of conflicting opinions and statements about what happened, but to the best of my understanding, it seems like they were clear to burn only clean wood, and some of it turned out to be not clean, coated with paint, for example. When asked, a representative said that there was a possibility that mixed debris made its way into the fire as well. Supposedly, the fire was nowhere near the water supply, but clearly, that's not the case. There is no statement about what specifically was burned, unfortunately, so it's a bit hard to talk about long-term results. However, I'm comfortable in assuming that the issue at hand is miscellaneous toxic particles in the water that renders it dangerous. As I'm currently writing and reading this, I can see no solutions in place for the specific issue, which sucks because every single person on this planet deserves water. Water for drinking, water for cooking, water for cleaning, water for hygiene, and water for everything else water is needed for. According to the UN, on the topic of water and sanitation, their target is for everyone to have clean water by 2030. For you clueless, that will mean approximately 16 years without good water, assuming it takes that long. There are places that have been under advisories for far, far longer, but even just a few days without good clean water is a few days too many. They also say that their goal is to reduce the pollution of water and air by 2030, which is again a good goal, but it could be shaping up to be too little, too late globally. Something about that jogged my memory, and it caused me to remember that Justin Trudeau had made some promise about water. So I looked it up, and it turns out that I was right. An article by CTV from a year ago confirmed my little epiphany by saying that he wasn't able to fulfill his promise on providing safe water to all Indigenous communities by March 2021. This is something we unfortunately see a lot in Canadian governments. Promises to fix the water crisis by a certain date that ends up disregarded and incomplete. Now, to be fair, we often do end up with minority governments, but at the same time, it's a human right. Now comes the big question. What can be done about all of this? I've written and posted some tweets on my Twitter @KnowledgePuddle, as per the instructions for the original assignment, and I've promoted a petition to the Canadian government that pressures them to provide water to more communities, along with links to resources that I used. I encourage you to go check them out and to learn more about the situation. All the links will also be in the description of this episode, at least on YouTube. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope I've inspired you to take action in support of First Nations drinking water issues. Welcome to the Knowledge Puddle. Cut!